Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm really excited today because I have got a special guest, Cristina. Hello.
Hello.
How
How
are
are
you?
you, everyone? Thank you for having me, Bridget. I'm very excited about this podcast.
Yeah, no, we're excited to have you on. So you are one of Bayleys' top 20 Auckland real estate agents and top female for Ponsonby. Congratulations. That's
Yeah,
wonderful.
thank you very much.
And also, the one thing about you is you are really community minded. So you really care about your community, and you've won first place individually for the community under the Real Estate Institute of New Zealand. Not
Yes,
once, but you've actually won it twice under the
yes.
REINZ.
REINZ, yes.
Yep. And also from a company perspective, when you were with a former company. So that's
Yes,
brilliant.
yes. So it's pretty much 3 times, which is
Yeah.
very nice to be recognized. Not that I actually interesting. Yeah, so it was my PA that applied for it. So when I was invited to the awards, I didn't know why. And suddenly, I won the award and I was very excited. It was very nice. Yes.
Oh, well, the community, is really fortunate to have your support. Well, today we are talking about a topic that's really close to your heart because you have walked in people's shoes with divorce and separation and
Yes.
what it looks like in terms of family homes and buying properties, renting properties, all of that. So today we're talking about divorce and real estate, navigating property transactions and times of transition, which obviously,
Yes.
as we know, it's a real life transition, that divorce and separation process.
Yes, it is. Yes.
So I wanted to ask you a few questions. And because of your experience with divorce, but also because of your huge wealth of experience with being a real estate agent. And the first question really is how can you assist clients navigate the real estate market when they're going through divorce and separation?
Yeah. Well, as we were saying, as I have been through it myself, then I can relate to it. And selling a property, it is stressful by itself, but selling a property while somebody's going through a divorce is even more stressful. And my whole style throughout the whole entire process is to try to make it as smooth and stress-free as possible. So that is always, and all the situations are very different. Some separations are amicable, some separations are not. So the most important thing is have really good communication with both parties. So have really good setup with texts or emails or a group chat or however they want all the communication to be set up from the beginning. Ask them how they want the communication to be. Sometimes if it has to be through lawyers, we do through the lawyers, however they want it to be set up, but they need to they need to feel that they're getting the same communication and they can trust the agent that is working in the best interest for both of them.
So you're impartial.
Yeah. Exactly.
So what's a really good strategy then for people who are going through this journey in terms of selling a property that they own? It's probably usually the family home in the first instance.
Yeah. So I usually suggest the vendors to get a few appraisals so they have different values and opinions out there. The more information is, the better for them to make informed decisions. Sometimes if they can't agree on a price, I always suggest for them to get evaluation. Sometimes they can get evaluation themselves, so they can get for the property between them, or they can get one each and then do an average. But all the appraisals, all the valuations can vary, so then they have to agree in a price. But at the end of the day, what they need to realize, the most important thing is that we will set up everything to sell their property, and we're going to be through every single detail, from the photography, video, floor plan, and how we present the property to its best to maximize the price. So putting all of those appraisals and valuations sometimes on the side, I know that I'm going to do the best to get the best price in the market at that time. And they need to trust that working in every single detail to achieve that successful result. Yes.
Yeah. I wanted to come back to, you talked about valuations for the property. So would your advice be that if people are, one party is deciding to buy the other party out of the property, the family home generally, would you recommend a valuation to be done, or obviously two valuations if they can't agree on the property?
Look, it's interesting. For example, one couple that they separated, and we ran a campaign, and their price expectations were actually very, very high. When we ran the campaign, people were not seeing the price where they wanted to sell. And so one thing is where the vendors, what the vendors want and what the buyers are prepared to sell. And I just communicate that to them. And so sometimes for them, it is good to get an independent valuation that would actually, and many times that valuation comes very similar to where the buyers are seeing it as well. There is many different ways to valuate a property at the moment. Of course, there's lots of different valuations. You have the bank valuation, homes valuation, all the estimates as well from one roof.
Real estate, your appraisal. Hey, your appraisal.
Real estate appraisal. But at the end of the day, the truth is the market is only, the value is only going to be dictated by the buyer at the time to buying the property.
But if one of the parties is buying the other one out, generally they do that in terms of agreeing on the price.
Oh, yes. Sorry, I missed that on your question. Yeah. So if another party is buying someone out, the best way is to get an independent valuation, of course, because even in the way that we do appraisals, like real estate agents, salespeople, we based all of the estimate based on recent comparable sales. But sometimes if you get different valuations, the appraisals, they can vary for 100 or 200,000. And the same can vary with a valuer. A valuer just goes into a lot more detail, but it's a registered valuer, usually sometimes registered with the bank. So it has that more weight, I would say. Yeah. But so, usually they're quite similar, Yeah.
So tell me about the legal implications or considerations that people selling have to think about.
Well, it depends again on every couple, if they're if it's an amicable separation or if it is not. Sometimes they would have, each person would have their own lawyer to advise them throughout the sale, and then they would have one neutral lawyer that would be doing all the conveyancing. But sometimes if it is all amicable, they just use one lawyer. So that's, but of course they always need to have legal advice. Yes, I always recommend that, and they need that anyway, because when selling the property, we draft the sale and purchase agreement in-house with all of what we recommend as clauses, but then we send that to the lawyer who's going to be doing the conveyancing, because we need the final auction agreement to be approved by the vendor's lawyer before we share it with any buyer. So then we get an offer, they know it's all been okay by their lawyer. Yeah.
So the tricky situations, how do you handle it when both parties in a divorce have differing opinions about the listing price or the negotiation terms? And I'm sure you've had that more than once.
Yes, I did. And this is the case that I was talking about before, where they did had different opinions, and they both decided to get one valuation. So they both hired one valuer, and then they said, okay, we will sell at this price. And we had a successful sale that was actually around and a bit over the valuation, which was really good. But then there was another couple that they couldn't agree as well on the price. Each of them got a valuation each, which was interesting because it was like $300,000 apart, but then they met in the middle. So there's always, different ways of getting to an agreement that everybody's happy. Yeah.
So in terms of everyone being happy, how do you keep them equally informed and involved in the selling process with you?
So basically, in pretty much, in a lot of the cases, we have like a WhatsApp group where I have also my executive assistant and my team there. And we are all in the same chat. So then I can keep them informed about absolutely everything throughout the campaign, how many people has gone through the open home, what is their feedback, etc., etc. And I also do a weekly report that gets sent to them by email or through the WhatsApp. And I also do vendor meetings. Now, it happens sometimes that it's not amicable, so I have to do it all separate, but they know they're getting all the same information. So it's basically just being transparent and both parties getting all the same information.
So confidentiality, how do you handle that? Because there's a lot of sensitive information regarding the divorce that's not disclosed to other interested parties potentially in the property.
Well,
how do you do with that?
What I actually do is, when selling a property, people ask why are they selling. Before I actually disclose that is a separation, I actually get both parties to agree they're okay for me to disclose that. But if they don't want me to disclose it, because sometimes it's very personal, they're going through a hard time, there's kids involved in the community and the school, or they just don't want to disclose it. Basically, if they said why the parties separating, when usually, when there is a family house and they're separating, I can just say, look, the parties are downsizing, which is usually the case because they would just sell and buy something smaller. So I don't have to disclose it if the parties don't agree.
Yeah. So have you worked with divorcing couples who had to sell their property actually for different reasons, like they're having to relocate or for financial constraints, particularly of late, I would imagine?
Yeah, I have. And one of the things that there's a company, and there's a few companies that it's really good that it's they actually pay for the marketing and all the preparation to sell a property, like staging or gardening or painting, anything that the property needs to get ready to go to the market. This company pays all of that, and then it's great because once the property sells, then from the deposit that company gets paid. So it's actually a really, really good service or company that the offering is really good, because then it makes the whole process easier, that they don't have to say, oh, I pay this or you pay that or half each or how it works. Sometimes there is a trust involved and things. So sometimes this is actually quite easy and takes some of that financial pressure away as well.
Yeah. So coming back to disagreements and arguments and conflicts from clients, not just when selling a house, how do you handle that stuff?
Well, look, usually, some of the disagreements could be mainly about when we get to the final about the price. But the really good thing, usually I recommend selling by auction, which is really transparent, and also they want to deal with buyers that are unconditional. So then we don't have to have a sale that is conditional and it drags on, and then potentially that doesn't happen. So auctions are actually quite good. So it's all transparent what the market would pay. And then if it hits reserve, which is what they have agreed, great. If it doesn't, and there's negotiations, sometimes that could get a bit tricky if they can't agree on the price. Yeah. So usually the property could pass in, and then we deal with that afterwards by negotiation. Yeah.
Right. So tell us about some of your positive testimonials, the success stories with people who have divorced but have used you to sell their home, and potentially you've put them into their new homes.
Yes. So I do that quite a lot as well. Usually the party that is living in the house is the one that has to find something else. So I always assist that person even before the sale to start looking at what it could they could find. It can I always recommend as well that they have a plan B just in case they can't find something. So they could stay at a family or maybe a short rental, and then of course when it's a separation and somebody has to go and find a house afterwards, I always recommend they put a long settlement. And if somebody, it doesn't suit them, the long settlement, then you can do a variation just for that person if they're successful on the auction, but everybody else will have the long settlement. So it's always good to have more people at the auction bidding and try to accommodate. Ideally, they change on the settlement date for them to have, a better price, and that also helps with finding another property afterwards. Yeah.
So what are your 3 hot tips and takeaways for people who are in the process of divorcing and need to sell their property or buy properties?
Yeah. Well, it is as I said, it is a very, very stressful time, but I think it's selling when they are ready, preparing the house to its best so that they can have the best outcome, because it's their asset and they want to maximize their value. So presenting it really well is quite important. And I think sometimes one of the important thing is the party that is not living in the house to be very to appreciate or realize that the party that lives in the house usually has a lot more work to cleaning and getting the garden ready and all of those things. So I think it's important if the other party cannot help with getting the house ready or gardening and stuff, maybe to get someone else or pay someone to help the party that is at the house to listen a little bit that stress and the work that person has to get the house ready. Yeah.
So what about short-term options for people in terms of from a housing perspective? What are your recommendations?
Well, there is quite a lot of Airbnb. Usually that is not the cheapest, but it's easy because it's furnished. And then I usually suggest, the best thing to do is put everything in storage. Try to go somewhere where it's all furnished. So when you find a house, it goes straight from the storage to the house. Sometimes that doesn't really work. So then, find potentially a rental, which would be, family or friends, an outhouse or something that would be, not super flash, but something that would accommodate in the meantime and not have to pay a lot of money. Because if you have like a self-contained granny flat or studio, that could be a really good option to have the time to find the right property. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, Cristina, thank you for your wisdom.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and I would love to help anyone that is going through divorce sell their property in the least stressful way as possible. So feel free to give me a call, even just for some tips or advice. I would love to hear from you. And thank you, Bridget, so much for inviting me to this podcast.
You're most welcome. You have to come on again soon. And we will have all of Cristina's details underneath this webinar. And thanks again, Cristina. Let's have a chat shortly about when can you come back on again. Yeah.
Yes.
Have a lovely day, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.